All right, so two big, broad themes for Mr. Sugiyama's visit. Let's try and make sense of this by speaking to our reporter Ho Na, who's been covering the event here in Beijing. First of all, on the DPRK, what is it that China and Japan can do other than strengthen UN Security Council resolutions and sanctions? And is there a sense here in Beijing, in foreign policy circles, that something more needs to be done to deal with the DPRK? It can't be business as usual.
Hello, Zaka. Well, Sugiyama has arrived here in Beijing yesterday. Well, he's scheduled to meet with his Chinese counterpart, Wu Jiawei, for talks on the situation on the Korean Peninsula and, of course, on the territorial dispute on the Diaoyu Islands. Well, his trip this time to Beijing has been extremely low-key, so far we don't have any official information released about his talks with Wu Jiawei or his schedule today. But we do know that earlier last week, right after Pyongyang's third nuclear test, they too had already exchanged views on the situation on the Korean Peninsula. And also last Thursday, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has held a telephone talks with the U.S. President Barack Obama over countermeasures against the DPRK. Well, the two allies agreed to take resolute stance on the DPRK and work together within the United Nations for more sanctions against the country. While China, we know as important stakeholder of the six-party talks, China expressed its firm opposition against DPRK's nuclear test this time, but also China calls for all parties concerned to stay calm and not to take any actions that will worsen the situation on the Korean Peninsula. Zaka.
All right, Ho Na, and let's talk about the Diaoyu Islands issue, which has soured ties between China and Japan in recent months. Over the last, say, month or so, there have been a series of low-key but very important visitors from Japan. We had the former Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama, the LDP Senator Kenji Kosaka, and then you had the new Komeito, which is an ally of the ruling party LDP, its leader Natsuo Yamaguchi coming to China. What's going on here? Is there a sense that all of these high-profile visitors are helping to try and ease tensions between China and Japan on the Diaoyu Islands?
Well, we know that Zaka, Shinzo Abe is going to start his trip to the U.S. on Thursday. Well, this postponed trip to the U.S. aimed at repairing and enhancing the U.S.-Japan alliance, which Abe said is at the core of his foreign policy. Well, the other thing Abe cannot ignore about regarding the foreign policy is Japan's relations with China. Ever since Japan announced its nationalization plan of the Diaoyu Islands, the Sino-Japanese relations has been deteriorated. Especially we seen it on February the 8th, the Chinese Defense Ministry has announced a statement saying that Japanese allegation on Chinese ships locking fire control radars on Japanese ships and planes. China says this allegation is untrue. And also, according to Japanese media, Japan is going to include China's Diaoyu Islands into his application for UNESCO World Natural Heritage. And China says this is pure provocation. Well, we see that Shinzo Abe's policies towards the territorial dispute began to show two sides. On one hand, Abe wants to mend fences with China. On the other hand, he claimed the sovereignty of the Diaoyu Islands, and he said this issue is non-negotiable. As we know, on the occasion of the 40th anniversary of Sino-Japanese normalization, Shinzo Abe, who had visited China in an icebreaking trip during his first term in 2006, should review his China policy and again break the ice of the coldest winter of China-Japan ties in the 40 years. Back to you, Zaka.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. It's going to be an interesting visit, Shinsuke Sugiyama here in Beijing. Thanks very much, Ho Na, for joining us with your inputs on that story.